Andrew is a chief connecting officer at the C-Suite Network, where he specializes in building strategic alliances and growth partnerships for the world's largest executive network. With over 4 decades of grit, highlight his 40-plus years of entrepreneurial experience, spanning industries from hospitality and media to lifestyle development and early-stage ventures. Host of the Daily Drew Philosophy, mention his role as a mentor and author of The Daily Drew, a Substack dedicated to mindset, business strategy, and finding clarity through life's highest of highs and lowest of lows. A true autodidact. Note his School of Life education, having built businesses from scratch, secured 7 patents, and launched 14 radio/TV shows, including the Wild West Crypto Show, Global Ventures. Touch upon his current work in international real estate, serving as a senior sales executive for Roten Caribbean Living and a partner in the Rancho Santa Lucia Resort in Mexico. The core mission: frame the conversation around his belief that business isn't just about transactions, but the strength of relationships and the misfit spirit that drives innovation. Now, let's bring Andrew on and dive deep into Andrew's business genius.
Andrew, the purpose of my podcast really to find out your genius, your business genius. And, it's amazing when you and I were talking about the green room, you started going into your life as a child, a younger person, and how it led you to where you're at today. So I want to go back, Andrew. I want to go back again with you. When did you notice something was different about you, that you had an entrepreneurial spirit?
Well, I'll tell you. So this goes way back, Aaron, because I'm the middle child of 7 boys, raised on a little bitty farm south of San Antonio, and I was raised more like our parents were raised, because there was 7 of us boys, me and my 6 brothers, my mother and father raised in up until I was about 10 years old. We were in an old farmhouse built in the 1850s, 900 square feet. 2-bedroom, 1 bath, 9 of us living in that house. But it was all we knew. And we lived on this little farm that it was the ranch house for a 40,000 acre ranch, which was the start of our little 20 acres. And so by the time my parents bought it, there was 20 acres on the San Antonio River, and there was a mile of dirt road and 4 easements just to get to our house. Yeah. But Aaron, as so many as we're raised years ago, we didn't know we were poor. Because, man, my dad, I've actually written a book. I'll publish it here soon. I've written a book called Gamifying Parenting. And it was based off what my dad did. Now, my dad, he was a pretty tough old bird like they were in those days. And he was pretty quick to get the belt out and wreak havoc if he needed to. And I was on the receiving end of that quite often.
Yeah.
But you know the drill. And what I learned very young is being out on that farm, we were made to work. And you fed the animals, you took care of the farm, you weeded the garden and watered and everything else before you yourself ate, because that's what fed us. So we were taught a pecking order. And, we were just raised the way that most of this country was raised in the early days. And I got all the benefits of that because And there were some things that came with it. Once my dad started making some money, well, then I'll never forget. I'm the middle child, so my 3 older brothers and I were the ones he kind of engaged. And he said, "All right," he said, "I'm going to have a bedroom added on and a bathroom for your mom and I. That'll give us some more room in this house." And he said, "Give you guys a bathroom you can use," because we couldn't really use the bathroom in the house. Although outhouses were kind of outlawed or they were taboo by the time I was born in 1960. They were still in heavy function at our house because it was better than the alternative, But let me tell you, my dad would load up with us kids. We're always made to work. And then once we got a little old enough, it'd be a Saturday morning. My dad would say, "All right, boys, load up a couple of the lawnmowers and the edger and some trimmers and the broom and the rake, and we're going to go." And he would set 2 of us on one side of the road and 2 of us on the other in our old pickup. And we'd walk down. He'd find a neighborhood that looked like yards needed mowed. and two of us kids, we're probably the youngest was me at about, 8 or 9, and then up to 12, 13 years old. And he'd have us walk both sides of the road, and we'd knock on the doors until we'd mow yards up until lunchtime. And then he'd take us out, and we'd go to a place called Floyd's Dairy Bar off Goliad Road in San Antonio, where they had 6 hamburgers for $1. And he'd buy, remember the little bitty hamburgers like Griff's and everybody had? Yeah. He'd buy 30 of those hamburgers and a gallon of Dr. Pepper and a family order of fries. And, we got to go out to eat because we never got to go out to eat. So that was a big treat for us. And then after lunch, we'd go cut another 4 or 5 yards. And at the end of the day, Aaron, my dad taught us business from the early age. We'd sit around the bar, and he'd lay all the cash out on the bar. And then he'd go and say, all right, boys, 20% goes to the house, which was my dad, for his mower and equipment and all that. And this is the gas, the expenses we use, and this is the food from Floyd's Dairy Bar. And let's say just round numbers for easy. Aaron, we'd make $100, $20 to go to the house, and then expenses were another, call it $20. That left $60. So my dad got half of that $60, and us boys got the other half to split up between us. And that's how we learned to work. And so when we talk about being an entrepreneur, well, here's what I learned pretty quick. Next door to us in that little 20 acres we lived on was about 100 acres that a guy named Mr. Jenkins owned. And it was a seasonal park. Twice a year, he'd open it for Easter and 4th of July. And being over on the south side of San Antonio, that park would fill up with a bunch of Mexicans out there, in their cars and camping out. And there were things we didn't see. But old Mr. Jenkins, after he'd seen us heathens running around there next to his property, when they'd leave after a weekend of camping out and having fun, Mr. Jenkins came over and knocked on the door one day, and he said, hey, Mr. Taylor, he said, I'll pay your boys 25 cents an hour to pick up trash. And so he had a tractor with a trailer and a bunch of 55-gallon drums, and we'd spend 4 or 5 days picking up trash. And we got paid $0.25 an hour, which was a lot of money to us in those days. But Aaron, here's the funny thing. I had my old buddy, Russell Reed, and Russell, he was a city slicker. His dad was a fireman, and they were more than happy to let him come over to our house and camp out all he wanted to. And I loved doing it. And so I found out I could put Russell and get one of my other buddies over there when we had to pick up trash. I could pay them 15 cents an hour.
Oh my God.
And I could make $0.10 an hour off of them, right? So I learned how to leverage people and make money. And, by golly, we did it through all of our life. And Aaron, they weren't all good stories in that. Now, they were all good stories, but we weren't always doing the right thing. And here's one of the funnier stories that I tell is, we go on up, and as we get on up through the years and all that, well, my dad knew a bunch of people. He was a fuels inspector for the federal government. And so we always had 2 or 3 pickups and a couple of cars, and most of them didn't run. We'd work on them. We were taught to work on everything. And my dad, when we were at the start of the summer, my dad would go and after we'd made some money, he'd say, all right, boys, load up in the truck. We thought we were going to go mow yards. And he said, no, just bring your money with you. So we go up there, and there was a place over on the south side of San Antonio called Allcoin, and it was the local pinball machine company. And he'd take us up there for probably 5 years. Every summer we did this. And my dad did this to teach us and give us something to do. But we'd go into Allcoin, and they'd have all the new pinball machines. This was before they had video games. This was before Pong and all that. And so they'd have pinball machines in there, and they'd have the new ones in the front. And you'd push the coin return, they'd restart the game. So while we'd be up in there playing these new pinball machines nobody had ever seen, my dad would be there talking to the guy that owned Allcoin. And sure enough, he'd come out there after about 30 minutes and say, all right, boys, load up. He'd say, we're going to go get us and come on to the back here. I'm going to show y'all can pick a couple of these games. Well, basically, we were going back to the junkyard in the back. And that's what my dad was doing. And I'll never forget, first time we bought pinball machines, we bought 2 of them. We paid $10 for one and $15 for the other, but they didn't work. But my dad set out and he got the rubber bumpers and relays and points and connections and took those things to the house, and we'd work on those things till we'd get them working. And over the next few years, Aaron, we had half a dozen pinball machines and a foosball table, and we had a pool table, and we had our own arcade at our house. And everybody thought we were rich, and we were poorer than all of them.
Right.
So what my dad did is basically to keep us busy and out of trouble. He just kept us working. But I'll tell you, so through these years and going and getting stuff, and when I was about probably 13, and of course, you know, being raised on the old farm, you knew how to drive a truck and a tractor and a mini bike and a lawnmower from time you could walk, you know. And so my old man told us one day, first couple of times I was 12 or 13, he said, all right, boys, he said, we're going to go up there to old Tony Griesenbach's and get watermelons. His watermelons are ready, and he's going to let us pick a few. So we'd run on up there, and we'd load the truck up with watermelons. And, well, after first year of doing that, my dad said, hey, y'all don't need me to do this, but wait until the melons are cooled off a little bit. Go out there about 10 in the evening, because if you go and pick them while they're hot, they'll explode on you. Made sense, right? Aaron, I have to tell you, I get my buddy Russell Reed. We're probably 14, 15. We get an old Dodge truck with the slant six in it, this old farm truck, 3 on the tree. And get my brother Greg and his buddy Glenn Lamb. We all load in the truck, and we go. They were going to camp out with us that night. We go out there to 37 and 1604 to Tony Griesenbach's place. 37 didn't go past 1604 in those days, but it went to it. And we go to Griesenbach's field, and we're sitting there picking watermelons, and we're rolling them over the fence, and the barbed wire fence is covered with grapevines. We're rolling watermelons over next to the fence at about 11:30. Truck comes pulling up, and I'll be darned if it isn't Tony Griesenbach. And he's looking. We had a layer of watermelons in the back of the truck, but we were going to fill it up. You know, we had all of them stacked against the fence there. He couldn't see us because of the grapevine. Plus, old Griesenbach, he liked to go on South Preston to the little beer joints. So he was coming home from there, and he looks at him, and he's cussing. He goes, "Oh, stealing my watermelons. I'm going to get these kids." And we're sitting there. We didn't know what to do. You know, I'd seen the back end of buckshot a time or two in my day.
Oh, my God.
Yeah. And so anyway, he drives down about 100 yards and turns around, and he's facing us. And we had to turn around and go the other way because it was dead end to his house if we'd have kept going. And so my brothers sitting there, they're scared. And I've never been smart enough to be afraid of anything. Mm-hmm. So they said, what are we going to do? And I said, tell you what, I'll crawl on my belly and get behind the truck. He can't see us. Y'all roll me watermelons, and I'll load them in the truck. And then I'll crawl around in the window, and I'm going to crawl in the window so that the cab light doesn't come on, right? And I said, as soon as y'all hear me start that truck, y'all jump in the back. We're taking off. So I'll be darned if we don't do that, Aaron. We get it all set, and we get it ready. I climb in the window. I start that old Dodge truck up. All of a sudden, I can feel, 3 of them hitting in the back of the truck, and I turn around. As soon as we get turned around, his headlights come on. And he's in a Chevy with a 350 in it, and I'm in an old 64 Dodge truck, man, with a slant 6 in it. We start heading, and we get on to 37, south of where the river crosses, and San Antonio River. And we get up there, and, man, he's gaining on us, right? And so my brother's sitting there in the window. He goes, what do we do? I said, throw watermelons at him. And I look on the website, Aaron. Here we are throwing his watermelons at him, right?
Oh, God.
But anyway, so we get out there, and they throw 2 or 3 watermelons, and sure enough, Griesenbach just slows down before we got to the river, and he turned around, and he went on back, and we get to the house. When we get to the house, of course, my friends are asking me, are we stealing those? I don't know. So the next morning, we go to bed. Next morning, we get up. My dad used to come down there when we were camping out and have coffee with us. And when he comes down there, he goes, "Oh, y'all did pretty good on the melons last night." And I said, "Pop, are we stealing those melons?" And he just kind of laughs, and he goes, "Yeah." And I said, "Well, I didn't know we were stealing them." He goes, "Listen, Griesenbach doesn't want us going in there till after the pickers get all the good ones. So if I told y'all we're stealing them, you probably wouldn't like it. But if I told you that they were going to explode, it made sense."
That, Andrew, that is amazing. basically what I'm hearing from you, bro. You are the epitome of why I created this podcast. You've been an entrepreneur since an early age.
Yeah.
Andrew, I'm curious. I got to know. I thought you had permission to pick the watermelons in the field.
Yeah. Oh, let me tell you something. Picking watermelons is, if you had never done it, it's something you got to try.
Well, it's the hiring of the kids to work for you. It's pretty obvious where you got your stroke of genius. Your dad was amazing. I'll be honest with you. I hear it's an honor to your father, and your dad. Man, he really laid the foundation for you being an entrepreneur.
Oh, he did. And let me tell you, when the first time he added on to the house, this is how he did it, Aaron. He said, "Now listen, I made some money. We're going to add a bedroom and a bathroom, but I want Mike and Steve. I want y'all to shadow the carpenters, and Chris, you shadow the plumber, and Drew, you shadow the electrician, and y'all learn how to do what they do. And then we're going to add a kitchen and another bathroom on our house." So while we're out there, and then when he goes to have the rest of it added on to, we were out there getting paid to straighten nails, and that's how we learned how to do stuff. And then after that, if we ever needed things done, we never hired them. We were made to be contractors from a very young age and being right. And that's why I'm an inventor, Aaron. What you found out when you were a kid is you may not have the tools to do something, but if you have the attitude, you can do anything, and you can buy the tools.
Well, boom, that's it, Andrew. Listen, I got through telling you the green room. When I first met Jeff Hazlett, it was about attitude. In fact, when I first met him, he had just wrote his book, Think Big, Act Bigger. And that having a relentless attitude is what put him where he's at. And now you're mentioning it. You're mentioning don't give up, keep going, keep at it. And look at you today. So where do you I'm gonna have a cough. I'm sorry, I have a cough.
That's all right.
What was the first company you ever built?
Okay, so actually I wrote a book when I was 14, typed it on the typewriter myself, an IBM Selectric. And I sold about 20 of those books for $1 a piece to friends of mine. And it was how to make extra money. And it was things that we'd all done. So I wrote that book of all the things my dad made us do. And it was everything from, I sold 20 copies of it. I didn't make any money, but it told me all of these things were little experiments. And it also kind of gave me the gift of gab. What I found out, Aaron, is that you don't know unless you ask. And if you don't ask, you'll never get. Right? And so I became the asker, and I got told no all the time. But no didn't mean no. It just meant they didn't have enough information.
Right.
So then coming up out of that, learning to do things through school, I went to work for a Dairy Queen when I was 16. And we worked in my dad's lab. He had a fuels testing lab that we worked in. We were made to make money from the time we were very young, because by the time you were 12, 13, 14 years old, you bought all your own clothes. If you wanted a vehicle, you could buy it. But my dad wasn't going to provide that stuff for you. And he had a hard and fast rule. I left home when I was young because he said, if you don't like my rules, you can hit the gate. And so one day I came home and I didn't like his rules. I just packed what little few things I had and left. But he had laid this foundation of all these things and telling the truth and being with people and how to treat people. And I have to tell you, Aaron, as I look back on it now, the movie Karate Kid, when that first came out, and I ended up raising my kids the same way. But my dad taught us to do things that were the tools that we've used in our entire life. And it's how to treat people. It's decorum and acumen and being a gentleman and opening the door and taking care of the ladies and always pitching in and doing your part, being there to help. All of those foundational things that we don't teach for a couple of generations, Aaron, you see it. Kids have been taught that y'all are the prize that God gave us. And so I'm going to adore and worship you, and you're never going to have to do anything. And then when they hit 20 years old, they send them out to the world. And we have to deal with these entitled, crybaby, no count folks that think we owe them a living. And that dog didn't hunt in our house. If you didn't take care of the animals in the garden, you didn't eat.
You know, Andrew, that foundation, because you and I are real close in age of it, really.
Yeah.
But that foundation used to be back in the day. It was available. It made us productive members of society. Nowadays, the kids, they're, like you said, they're entitled. They feel like it's not have to do anything. And then receive everything.
Yeah.
So before I get a bent as a sheep, and that one kind of boils my spice a little bit. But Andrew, at what point did you made that really, you look at you today, tell me what we're getting money at the time there now. We're going to jump forward now to what you're doing today,
Okay.
which is a chief connecting officer. Which I know why, because you've already made me feel comfortable. But tell me what that is. Tell me what you do.
You know, so here's the way that I look at it. And this is really what I've kind of done my whole life. Okay. If you found the best steakhouse that you've ever had, you tell all your friends about it, right? And I have done that in everything that I've ever done in my life. And a lot of it's been because I discovered things. I mean, the 7 patents I got, 4 of them sold $20 million worth of stuff. There's an old adage that necessity is the motherhood of invention, but I challenge that. I say it's laziness, because everything I've ever made was just to make something easier. And I tell people that Eli Whitney, I started the inventor group in San Antonio in 1997. Eli Whitney didn't invent the cotton gin because he wanted a better mousetrap. He built it because he was tired of having to pick cotton. You know,
right.
And so the inventions, when you're a farmer, when you're raised out, you're made to work on things. And I'll tell you another story. One of my brothers, one of them who didn't really work much, he was the only one who didn't my parents gave him. But and then he had a good career and everything else. But when he was at home, he's pretty lazy. And one day the Gremlin was the car that you could use if yours was broken or you didn't have one. And one day he told my dad, he said, "Hey, the clutch on that Gremlin's slipping." My dad said, "Well, get on out there and adjust it, you know." And so Steve goes out, and he's probably out there 10 or 15 minutes. He comes back in. My dad said, "Did you get that clutch adjusted?" He goes, "No, I can't figure it out." And this was my dad. This encompasses how my dad raised us. He said, "Son, let me ask you something. If you're in the middle of the damn desert and you had to adjust that clutch or walk 100 miles with no water or anything, what would you do?" He said, "I'd figure out how to adjust that clutch." And he said, "Then get your butt out there and adjust that clutch."
Right.
So about an hour later, he comes back in. My dad said, "Did you get it figured out?" And Steve goes, "Well, of course, you know," but that's the way that it was in our house. And so nobody complained that they didn't want to do a job. You did that, you got twice as many jobs. For me, what it taught me early on is show up early, always contribute, because what I found out, I got to hang around with the big guys if I was doing to help the big guys. Because you remember, Aaron, when we were kids being raised, the kids stayed over here and the adults stayed over here. But if you were an asset to the adults, if you went and got them a beer when they needed it, if you helped move chairs around, if you did things, the adults would let you hang around and you weren't a nuisance. And I was one of those kids. So as I got older, I found that I could make a certain amount of money if I was working for somebody, whatever they were going to trade my time for, which we call the hourly wage, right? Or if I made my own stuff, I can make 4 or 5 times the money if I was doing things myself. So I always had jobs on the side that I made extra money. So when I got out of high school, I went to work for a power plant. I worked there for 4 years. It's the only job I ever really had. And at that power plant, I busted my butt and I worked through that whole thing. I started in the coal yard And within 2 years, I was working doing generator maintenance because I took every correspondence, the course that they had. I learned everything that I could about how a power plant worked, what it did, and all that. And since I was so into it, they moved me up the ladder quicker than they did others. Now, that caused some problems with some folks, but I only worked 4 days a week, Aaron. So I worked Monday through Thursday, and Friday, Saturday, Sunday, I started a remodeling company. And then by the time in 2 days a week, I'd make about twice the money I'd make working 4 days a week at that power plant. So after 4 years, I quit. And that's when I started my first real business. I'd started it working, and I was in the remodeling business. Well, born out of that business, I came up with my first invention. So the bottom line, it was stepping stones.
What's the invention? I'm curious.
The first one was a technology that I was in I started a building cleaning painting company, born out of my remodeling company. I found out that I didn't want to chase turds for a living. I didn't want to be a plumber, and I didn't want to do as much hard work. But if you did remodeling and you were improving, people would pay a little more money. And you were kind of free to name your price doing it. And I found out that I could make more money doing that. And that's what I started doing initially, remodeling. But shortly into that, I wanted to build a bigger company. And I'll never forget, I remember looking at Terminex. I was thinking, you know what, if I had a brand like Terminex that people recognized. And so that's what I did. I started a company, and I had uniforms for my people, and we were doing things other people weren't doing. And I did specialty coatings. I got certified by the National Historical Society. Given the processes I could use, I could take graffiti off of the monuments. I worked on the missions of San Antonio. I worked in some of the national cemeteries. And what I invented was there was a technology used in the restoration of the Statue of Liberty where they used baking soda to blast, like sandblasting. But it was a big piece of equipment that used air and everything else. Well, I had power washers on my truck, and I would come home after working in the evenings, and I'd buy a 6-pack of beer, and I had a guy that worked for me, and we would piddle around in my garage trying to get that baking soda to flow into my power washer stream, my high-pressure water stream. And they had nozzles that would do it with sand, but the flow properties are very different. Anyway, it took me a few months, and I finally, using things that I finally got it to work, and I got it. So we had an adjustable stream of that baking soda. And then I created a nozzle that was the best that had ever been built that would mix that baking soda as a very mild abrasive. And so it ended up being used by Tyson Chicken and in aviation and by me for graffiti removal. And that technology is still all over the world today. That was my first invention. And I sold several $1 million worth of that equipment through the Arm & Hammer Baking Soda Company.
Yeah, that's freaking amazing, bro.
It is. And then what I learned from that is I learned how to get patents and how to make because actually when I signed the agreement with Arm & Hammer Baking Soda Company, when they looked at my patent applications, they said, your patents don't protect what you're trying to protect. And being the amazing company they are, because they could have easily stolen it. If you remember, the intermittent windshield wiper was stolen by all the car companies before it took 20 years for that guy to ever get money out of it. But Arm & Hammer didn't do that to me. They came in and they got one of their engineers, a guy by the name of Bill Spears. And Bill Spears came to me and he said, listen, here's what we're going to do. We're going to do a continuation on this patent. There's a couple of improvements. I'll also get named as an inventor, but we'll add the things into it that you needed to have to protect the novelty of this invention.
Wow.
And it was after that I started the inventors group in San Antonio, because I realized that inventors needed help. And my attorney had come to me and he said, listen, you're one of very few people that your inventions have actually made money. Would you mind mentoring other people? And that's how I got into that. And Aaron, I'm a networker. I like people. I don't like people that are jerks, but I love most people, you know? And so I never meet a stranger when I go places. Becoming the connecting officer is one of those things. I'm not doing anything more than I've done my whole life. It's just now I get a little bit of recognition for it. And I get to hang out with some pretty cool folks.
Yeah, it's pretty cool, Andrew. I gotta say, we're running out of time, but
I,
if I just sit there and take one takeaway, listen to you talk, the word having a can-do attitude.
mhm,
There
100.
is, I see what you're doing, what you've done. I also want you to plug your real estate company in a minute. The one thing Jeff Hazlett taught me is to have a can-do attitude. Because I'll tell you one thing: that stroke will do to you, it'll strip you of your can-do attitude.
I believe it.
But it's amazing you persevering and keeping going. I'm really amazed at what you're doing. But I do want, we're out of time, but I do want you to promote, yeah, for one this time. I mean, you probably don't need it, but you also have real estate.
Yeah, so in that, and actually my project in Mexico, because of the political and the climate stuff down there, is kind of on hold. But I met on a business cruise last year that Hazlett and that group's on this year. I went the first 2 years they did it, and I met a guy named Scott Miller from Roatan, and Scott had gone and he'd spent 15 years building resorts for Marriott and Hyatt and Hilton all over the Caribbean and other places. And in 2014, they sent him to scout Roatan, and he told them it was too early. But by the time I'd met him, he realized it was too early for them to get in based on their criteria. But he spent enough times realizing that if he bought property in and around where they're building resorts, it'd be worth a lot of money. So he basically went to Roatan, and he told me this story on that ship last year. He went to Roatan and took all the money he could put his hands on that he had made in the past 18 years, $60 million cash, and went to Roatan and started buying property down there to put Roatan on the map. And it is by far the best resort property I have ever seen. I end up,
What was the name of that again?
huh?
What was the name of it again?
It's Roatan. It's off the coast of Honduras. It's the island off the coast of Honduras, Roatan. And so when I met Scott, he and I talked for a couple hours. He told me what he's doing. I drug Jeffrey Hazlett went on that trip last year, so I drug Hazlett over there to meet Scott, and we went down there. Jeff and I went down there 2 weeks later to see what it was he was building. We came back from there and decided we were going to help him market that and get eyes on it and everything else. And it turned out to be one of those things, Aaron, Jeffrey Hazlett's an old bull. He's like an old bull elk, and I am too. And these bull elks were getting in there trying to pick, and I'm one of these guys. I can make my own party anywhere I go. So I made the decision. I'll keep doing what I'm doing for C-Suite, but I'm gonna show the Bay Islands, not just Roatan, but kind of all that there is down there, because it is anyone who has investment money and likes island property, real estate, and all that. Aaron, it answers all the concerns people have. It's safe. The infrastructure's there. They're redoing all the utilities, the water and electric and sewer and everything else. The roads are all being completely redone, almost finished. The quality of the people, some of the kindest people you've ever met. It's English speaking. It's safe. The appreciation of the property. Roatan, I'm telling you, the people that go down there, they're going to limit the number of people that can occupy Roatan. But those that get in, there's a run to it. And it's the thing I'm telling all the good people I can tell, check out Roatan. And I formed a company to market down there. We're actually going to be doing a television show about Roatan. It's that good a deal. And we're going to tell everybody, because it is the best kept secret in Caribbean life, Aaron.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. I mean, absolutely amazing. Of course, I'm in a wheelchair, and that is a dream of mine, but I think it's amazing. So, Andrew, I will let you know and let everybody else know that's watching this video podcast that I will put all Andrew's social media links in the description. So, Andrew, real quick in closing, what is your job description? What do you do for C-Suite Network? We got to give our buddy Jeffrey his lot, even though much better looking he is.
Absolutely.
But tell me, what do you do for the C-suite
So
now?
really, what I do is introduce, and I do it continually, people, because Aaron, what C-suite has, and this is what I found out why I became so passionate about it. It has got there's they tout 350,000 global members, by far the largest C-suite organization in the world. But additionally, it's trusted members to that organization. And so when you go become part of it, you find people that are like you, instead of, as you know, getting into all the things that you do, that I do, whether it's manufacturing or construction or intellectual property or wherever it is. You kiss a lot of frogs before you find the good ones. And so what I do is I find people that have needs that the C-suite, because anything that is needed in business, whether it's legal or human resources or marketing or market awareness or a tribe, the C-suite has it. So basically, what I do it is for C-suite, but it's really for the community at large. Is when I find people that are out there that need all the benefits that C-suite gives them. One can be just doing a show. I've got people I'm working with right now doing nothing more than teaching them how to do a show, which is the reason I did my first show in 1997, long before C-suite was doing them. But I found out the cheapest way to market and advertise your business. I started doing a radio show in 1997 on KTSA in San Antonio. And at the time, I didn't know anything about doing radio. The general sales manager, I'd been buying advertising for years, and he finally comes to me and said, "Why don't you just do your own show?" And that's what got me into media. And, fast forward 14 shows over the last 20 years and everything, or 25 years and everything else. It's been all of these things. Aaron, as you know, every step you take in your life, even God putting you in, so he slowed you down a little bit, giving you a stroke. But look what you're doing now. You didn't quit. You found another way
Yeah.
to make it work.
Um,
That's what we do.
that's an amazing point, Andrew. Now let's kind of end this topic because I'm 10 minutes up, but I find our conversation fascinating, bro. But it's kind of when you're up against the wall, when everything around you. I'll tell you what I believe the word relentless, because what you been and what you tell me in the story tell me are relentless. But for me, relentless means a circular. Everything around you, everything inside you, everything your body says stop. But relentless keeps going.
Yep.
It's funny that my goal is to write a book this year called Relentless Stroke Survivor. And again, the word relentless is really a business term, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Because I think you and I can give part anybody watching this video. If you're out there and you're self-employed, you're doing business, you're entrepreneur, be relentless, regardless of what. I knew I cater to the strokes of our community.
Right.
But in all reality, Andrew, when I just started this, everybody lined up with pitchforks and torches said I would never be able to do what I'm doing.
Yep.
This was years ago.
Yep.
But guess what?
Here
I'm
you go.
relentless, Andrew, and that's true. But for you too, same things. Keep going, naked and pop.
Yep. That's exactly right, buddy. Hey, I'll tell you one more thing when you talk about that being relentless. And as entrepreneurs, I ran a marathon on a dare in 1996. Okay. And people have asked me how long a marathon is 26.2 miles. I didn't know that at the time, but I found that out. And I will tell you, from mile 22, when my calves started charley horsing so bad I lost 30 minutes. Mile 22. And I quit running. I quit 1,000 times, but I never stopped. In my mind, I justified quitting. When you said you're suicidal and your other things, I've been there. But you can quit 1,000 times in your mind, but you never quit. You never stop. Right? And so I'm telling you, I finished that marathon in 4 hours and 11 minutes, which I understand is pretty respectable after having never run one. But I will tell you, I quit in my mind 1,000 times, but I never stopped.
Yeah, that really is true. So many times for me, and even before my stroke was the ultimate trying ground, trying for me as a man.
Yeah.
And I think that's a great point for all of you out there. Don't quit. No matter how bad, no matter how hard, no matter all the people around you, keep going. Keep going. The old term, put your nose to grindstone, is really true.
You bet.
Andrew, I cannot appreciate our conversation more. Appreciate it, brother. I really do.
Absolutely. Myself. And I have to tell you, buddy, like we said, you and I've been bouncing back and forth for many years to finally do a show. Thank you for this, man.
I appreciate it, bro. Thank you very much, Andrew. I really do appreciate that. But I want to thank you for being here, being on my podcast, and just being here with me. I appreciate it. So, say if somebody wants to do it, do you do what's your email, Andrew?
Yeah. Andrew Taylor 0904 at gmail.com. Best way to reach me. And you can also, if you want to text me, you can find me on LinkedIn. I think I told you in the message, uh, YouTube took down all my Wild West crypto shows. I've got them. I need to archive them somewhere else. But anyway, yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn. That's right. That's, under Andrew Taylor. But yeah, just reach out to me, and I'll even give you my phone number, but people have to text me first because I get a lot of spam stuff. But my
All
phone number.
right. What I'll do is I will put in the description of the video
You bet.
all your contact information on your social media that's available. Andrew, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it.
You bet. Thank you, Aaron. And folks, listen, I started, and you mentioned it, put my daily Drew in there because that
Oh,
is,
yeah. Tell me a little bit about that before we go. You do a podcast, correct? Called
yeah,
Daily Drew.
I just started. I will be doing a full blown podcast again. But what I started doing is just a daily uplifting message to help people. Because, folks, I have to tell you, I get up earlier than most people do. But I'm as scared as everyone else when I get up. And I look up and I say, God, I don't know if I can climb the mountain you got for me to climb today. And what I spend my first hour and a half doing every morning is working one step at a time and how I'm going to climb that mountain and working it out with God. And by the time I get out of bed and I get my first cup of coffee at 5:30, I'm ready to take the world on. So what I do then with that is I share with my daily Drew is an uplifting message for help you to get your mind right when you get out of bed, so you're not defeated when you start your day. And I have to tell you, I started this, and it's something I've done since I was young. I've done this in my mind, but I started actually doing this as a broadcast right at 2 weeks ago because of a young lady named Amy that I met down in, it's on Substack, that I met down in Roatan. And she told me after a couple of days of me being there, she goes, I wish I could wake up to you just sharing some good information every morning. And I said, well, by golly, I'll start doing that. Right now, I've got about 100 people listening to that thing every morning. It started 2 weeks ago. I want to grow it like wildfire.
It's so Andrew, it's so funny the parallel between what I do as true as what you're doing every morning like clockwork, and I look forward to it. I create what's called a Stroke Survivor Daily Inspirational Spark. I'll send it to you later.
Do that.
But I want to encourage people every morning just to wake up like you do. I get the morning dew. I now understand what it is.
Yeah.
And I'll post a link for people in. I'll put a link to where Andrew puts it.
Perfect.
So, Andrew, thank you again. Thank you very much. This podcast, I hope we're going to do it again. I hope. I'll be here again.
100%.
All right, Andrew, thank you and goodbye. Have a great day, Andrew.
You too, buddy. God bless.
Bye.